Hello, and welcome to our open house for the Rabbinic program of the International Institute for Secular Humanistic Judaism. This will be a chance for us to open up questions and answer questions about our program and what it's like to be a humanistic rabbi more broadly. I'm very pleased to be joined by my colleague, Rabbi Denise Handlarski, who is based in Toronto but also runs an online community called Secular Synagogue. So she has unique experiences and expertise. I'm very thrilled to be able to have her as part of the conversation. And thanks to those who've joined the open house as well. At the very beginning of the movement of humanistic Judaism, a key question was raised to Rabbi Sherwin Wine, one of our founding thinkers. And that question was, why are you calling yourself a rabbi? The irony was, he was hearing that question from both the religious direction and from the secular direction. The religious Jews would say, why are you calling yourself a rabbi? You don't pray to a God, you don't believe in a personal God, you're not teaching other people to believe in a personal God, you're not deciding Jewish law. Why are you calling yourself a rabbi? And from the secular direction, people had the same problem. We don't like rabbis, they said. The whole point of a secular Judaism is a rabbi-free Judaism, is a make-your-own-choices Judaism, is a the people decide Judaism. We don't need a new authority calling themselves a rabbi telling us what to do. Classically, when someone was ordained to be a rabbi, there were two questions that were asked and then answered. The first question was, Yoreh, can he teach? And it was always he before the modern era. Yoreh, can he teach? Yoreh, he can teach. And Yadin, can he judge? Yadin, he can judge. He can enact rulings of halakha, of Jewish religious law. So in a pre-modern setting, a humanistic rabbi really wouldn't make sense because the two jobs were to teach and to judge Jewish law. And if we are empowering individuals to be in charge of their own lives, then what does that have to do with a Jewish legal system with a rabbi telling you what to do? That was the secular objection, after all. But once the role of a rabbi has gone beyond deciding halakha, deciding Jewish law, as it did for the Reform movement and to some extent for the conservative movement and certainly for the Reconstructionist movement, now there are many roles that rabbis serve that might well be appropriate for a humanistic rabbi. Rabbis are community organizers who help congregations run, function, and be successful. They are personal counselors dealing with issues of psychological import, of emotional impact, end of life, healthcare, providing emotional support, what's called pastoral counseling. That's something that rabbis now do. Rabbis lead ceremonies, not just deciding the law of how the ceremony should be enacted, but actually running the program, giving a sermon, creating services if you don't have a fixed siddur in your movement. Rabbis, of course, remain in the role of teacher. That Yoreh, can he teach? That happens today too, of course. And we teach all ages, not just adults studying Jewish practice, but young adults, children, seniors, exploring Jewish history, Jewish music, Jewish culture, all the varieties of what it means to be Jewish. Rabbis help to represent the Jewish community, both an individual Jewish community to other Jewish communities and also more broadly to the non-Jewish world in which we live. And, of course, rabbis are mobilizers to work for the community, but also to do good in the broader world. If there's going to be a march or a protest or an initiative to try to improve things, be it through community service or by public action, rabbis are often the people involved in helping to give messages and to mobilize people to get out and do good. And most importantly, a humanistic rabbi is a scholar of humanistic Jewish identity and our philosophy on retainer, available to serve the Jewish world more broadly and their community more specifically if they're working in a congregational rabbinate. So there were enough of these human/Jewish needs that humanistic Jews needed served that it made sense to create our own humanistic rabbis. The first generation of humanistic rabbis in the 60s, 70s, and 80s were rabbis who had attended other seminaries for other movements, primarily the Reform movement, but occasionally the conservative movement as well, and then evolved into a humanistic approach to Jewish life. But it became clear by the early 1990s that the Reform movement was becoming more and more religious, conventionally religious, and the conservative movement and the Reconstructionist movement wasn't going to serve our movement's needs. So in 1992, the IISHJ initiated its own rabbinic program in North America. Its first graduate was ordained in 1999. In 2005, our sister organization, Tumurah, which means change, in Israel, was established and began training rabbis there. And their first ordinations, in 2003, Tumurah began because their first ordination was in 2007. I was able to attend that with Rabbi Sherwin Wein as well, shortly before his death. So over the years, we've ordained a dozen rabbis in North America and a few dozen rabbis in Israel as well. And they serve the Jewish world in various ways. Some of them primarily are doing ceremonial work, officiating at life cycle events like welcoming children, celebrating marriage and partnerships, or officiating funerals. Some of them are working as teachers in Israel through the school system, or in North America in adult learning settings, or sometimes even in academic settings. And many of them are working with humanistic Jewish communities, be they online or in person. And in those community roles, they serve those classical functions of organizing, motivating, mobilizing, and educating, and ceremonializing, and inspiring, and all those positive roles that rabbis can serve. So I thought what I would do, before turning it to Rabbi Henlarski to talk a little bit about her experience in our program and her rabbinate after being ordained, is to just review the basic requirements of our program. This can be found on our website at iishj.org. And then when you go there, you'll see programs, and the rabbinic program is right under there. So it describes a little bit the role of the humanistic rabbi. And then we have a series of admission requirements. So you do need to have an undergraduate degree. So this is a graduate level program, but it does not have to be in Judaic studies. That can be something you're adding through our learning process. We do want our rabbis to be members of secular humanistic Judaism in some capacity. Some join as at-large members of the Society for Humanistic Judaism. Others are members of local communities and then are members of the movement beyond that. We are not just training rabbis to be rabbis for anybody. We're training humanistic rabbis to be part of humanistic Judaism. We do want our students coming in to have some level of competency in traditional classical Hebrew. That is, if they're going to be reading a Bible passage, they should be able to generally know what's going on. You don't have to translate from scratch. You can simply be able to read and basically understand it. And also, of course, when we're doing liturgy, you have to be familiar with the traditional Hebrew of those, blessing formulas and so on. So there's some basic Hebrew ability to read that's important. For some people, they start out rusty or rough, and then they develop it through the program, but at least some basic competency is important on the way in. There is an application process, which includes an application form, a couple of essays to complete. We do want to see academic transcripts for the graduate level program. We do have some advanced psychological screening, which helps us to make sure that the person coming into the program is well suited to this role. And also, we hope helps the person get some sense of where their strengths are and where they might use some support or personal growth to make themselves an even more successful rabbi. We ask for a couple of references. There's an application fee, all those pieces that are reasonable for an application process. We do have an interview with our admissions committee. And then there are plenty of people who enter our program in what we call advanced standing. That is, they already have done a fair amount of Jewish learning, generally formalized in some fashion, often in a graduate level class that might qualify them to do an independent study for one of our course requirements instead of take the formal class, or even qualify at the outset. We had one student who came in with a master's in Hebrew Bible. Well, they didn't need to take our Bible class because they had that knowledge already in their resume, so to speak. So we're able to offer advanced standing as appropriate for people that come in with graduate level Jewish studies. There's a link here that talks more about the particular professional roles and graduation competencies of the rabbi that's worth looking at if you want a more in-depth explanation of what we're looking to do. Now, requirements for ordination. That's how you get into the program. This is how you get out of the program. So we have a series of courses to take. We also have an internship with a humanistic Jewish community. That is, you need to be able to get some live experience with real people doing what rabbis do and be able to take some feedback from people in how you're doing. That's useful both to refine how you're doing and to learn how to take feedback. Because I hate to break it to you, but People are going to tell you when you do something that they don't like as a rabbi. And how you take it is very important. If you can't handle the feedback, it's going to be a challenge for you. If you can find a way to separate the crank from the complaint, sometimes the complaint is valid. And so that's part of our tricky role. As rabbis, we're leaders of a community, but we're leaders of a community that we want to think for themselves. And that means they have the right to offer feedback to us. We have to learn how to take that. That's where that internship is very valuable, to get some life experience before putting yourself out there with the full title. So the requirements for our program are to complete an accredited master's degree in Judaic studies, Jewish studies, some field like that, if you haven't already earned it prior to entering the program. We do this both for credibility, in that a lot of other established seminaries provide an accredited master's degree on the way out. We're not accredited in terms of faculty and course offerings and so on. We also find that the accredited master's is valuable because it gives you a broader exposure to the world of academic Jewish studies, to a wider variety of faculty people, perhaps to contacts in your area who might be useful in the long run for your rabbinic work. So we want our students to come out with an accredited master's in Judaic studies. Some of them come in with it, some of them get it during the program, some of them even do it after our program because they only have so much time to do coursework, so they do our courses first and then the outside master's separately. Those can be done with in-person conventional bricks and mortar universities, or there are now a number of universities that offer accredited online masters in Jewish studies that you can explore. And we're happy to talk through with you if you get to that stage. Second one, we also offer our own graduate seminars, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. We have the internship with the community that I mentioned, and there's a rabbinic thesis, which is a more extended essay paper on a project of particular interest to you. We've had students do it on Torah commentaries. We've had them do it on inclusion of neurodiverse people in a humanistic Jewish community. And so you can find applied use for that rabbinic thesis. This is the list of the required seminars. These are the areas of competency that we want our students to be able to have and be able to speak on, teach on, and be a leader on, and be a resource on. These classes are mostly online. They combine synchronous, which means live classes, and asynchronous learning, where you watch some videos and do things on your own time. So that makes it more workable to run this on your own schedule and to be able to complete the coursework with less time devoted to being on a Zoom at the same time. There's only so much time you can spend online in a seminar, or in person in a seminar for that matter. So by splitting up some of the course requirements with these asynchronous mass open online classes or recorded videos to view and process on your own, it makes the course more accessible to students. So the course areas are broken up into four major categories. We've got Jewish history, with classes in ancient Jewish history, biblical literature, Second Temple Jewish history and literature. You'll notice we combine history and literature because for us, the literature is important, but not in a bubble, not as if it came from the sky. It was written by people in a time and place. So we need to understand the time and place to understand the literature, and we need to understand the literature to get a better understanding of the time and place. So it really dovetails well with each other. Same is true for the medieval and rabbinic courses, and then modern Jewish history is its own area. We also have a series of classes on Jewish culture. These include life cycle ceremonies, calendar and holidays, and liturgy, and varieties of Jewish cultural traditions. The four major areas we focus on are Ashkenazi culture, Sephardi Mizrahi culture, Israeli culture, and North American Jewish culture, so that our students get a good understanding of Jewish diversity as well. We have a series of professional skills classes. These are things that rabbis should be able to do, like helping to organize and run a school or to teach themselves, managing a community. You know, that community organizing stuff is there. I've gone over a lot of budgets in my time, and it is an important part of the job. Homiletics and communication, because this is part of what we do, and philosophic guidance and counseling. There's a lot of times where, you know, at a funeral, you've got to negotiate multiple parts of the family, and you're almost like the therapist that is trying to get everybody to get along for the purpose of this one event. Well, it takes some philosophical and counseling sophistication to be able to make that happen. And then finally, we have a series of courses on our core philosophy and our intellectual roots, where we come from, that helps to get a refined understanding of our ideology. There's a little bit more in detail description of the fieldwork projects and internship work to be done in 4 different areas. And there's also some more detail about the professional roles again down here. We have an association of humanistic rabbis that recognizes rabbis who are graduated from our program and from other programs too. And there's also, you can find a list of our alumni on our website. It's either under About Alumni, or you can link to it from here. And then you can get an idea of the kind of work that our graduates are doing. If you haven't filled out an information interest form, there's one of those on the bottom of that webpage. So that's a quick overview of the rabbinic program and its requirements. So if I don't see any immediate questions at the moment, we'll circle back if there are some. Maybe, Denise, you'd be willing to jump in and talk a little bit about your experience going through the program. You actually, I think, started the program post-Sherwin-Wine, so it was a very different experience than mine, and more illustrative of what's happening today, and also maybe how that experience in the program helped prepare you for your rabbinate out in the world.
For sure. Hi, everybody. So I'm Denise, and I'm in my kids' playroom in the basement, partly because they're home. So if I go upstairs, it's more chaotic. But it's also, I think, really great because I do think I'm the kind of rabbi that has been able to really integrate being a rabbi with a lot of pieces of my life. So some people are professionally rabbi, and it's sort of the only thing that they do. Rabbi Adam Shalom is rabbi and the dean of the ISHJ. I also am a university professor and a mom with 2 young kids and do some other work on the side. So one of the great things about becoming a rabbi, I think in any movement, but I really think particularly in the humanistic Jewish movement, is it's very flexible and you can do a lot of things with a rabbinic degree. So I will speak about my experience in the program. And I feel like I'm a good example if you are not somebody who has ever really intended to become a rabbi professionally or not for a long time. I was doing a PhD in English Lit, not anything to do with Jewish studies. And I was sort of considering becoming an officiant. That's how I started. And one thing led to another, and I ended up in the rabbinic program without all of those requirements that Adam mentioned. So really, I do want to emphasize that you can probably get a good start in the program without some of those things if you're willing to build them as you go. So I started in 2010 and I was ordained in 2013, which doesn't feel like so long ago, but maybe is. I came through the program when it was mostly in person, so I think that's a very welcome change for folks to be able to do it in a more flexible format. And I really, from my heart, want to say that the courses are excellent. I have many academic degrees and I found the quality of the learning in the classes to be the perfect blend of challenging without being overwhelming. And I think I had a lot of weird messaging about Judaism in my mind. I didn't think I was smart enough to like read the Torah, for example. When I started, I was intimidated. And then I was like, oh, it's just a book. You can read it, and the teachers were excellent. We got to learn with amazing, amazing faculty, both the ones belonging to the humanistic Jewish movement, but also outside faculty members from various institutions. And I really was inspired by the quality of the learning. I would say, I know Adam just shared the courses briefly, and of course, those are on the website for you to look at. If you were to compare them with the courses at other rabbinical schools, you would see a very big difference. I have many rabbinic colleagues that I've met through different kinds of programs that are pluralistic, so rabbis ordained by all of the different movements, and a lot of them will say, when I was ordained, I did not know really how to do a good job leading a community. I didn't have great skills for pastoral counseling. Some of that was part of the program. Sometimes a lot of people just spend a lot of time studying Talmud and they don't learn any of the nuts and bolts skills that being a rabbi really draws on. And so I feel very lucky to have been through a program where I felt very, very well prepared for all of the various aspects of leadership, of which there really are many. Some of it, as Adam said, is, teaching Torah. It's been great this week. We're in the week of after Simchat Torah, we restart reading the Torah cycle from the book of Genesis. So this week I got to teach the beginning of Genesis many times to different kinds of groups, my own community and some others. And I love that kind of text teaching, but a lot of my work is also helping people figure out how they want to make their intermarriage work. Some of what I do is, I started my own community. So figuring out like the sales and some of the web tech stuff. And of course, the program doesn't go into the nuts and bolts of web tech, but it does give you a really holistic sense of what it is to be a rabbi, which I think has been really helpful. I find the community really great. So some of you I know are already deeply embedded in humanistic Jewish community of some kind or other, and others might be new to it. Again, really dynamic and room for lots of different kinds of ways in. And the work I've gotten to do as a rabbi has been amazing. I live in Toronto, Canada, and so I served the humanistic congregation here for 7 years. It's called Orenu Congregation, and left, they're a wonderful community. I really left that community because of the pandemic and having 2 young kids and working full time as a professor. It was hard to keep all the plates spinning, but it's beautiful. It's amazing to be a congregational rabbi, and it's been amazing to be a rabbi who started my own thing. And so there are lots of ways you can take ordination. I will also say, if I wanted to do nothing professionally but officiate weddings, bar mitzvahs, funerals, and baby namings, I could do that, particularly because it depends where you are, but where I am, it's hard for people to find a rabbi who's willing to work with intermarried or dynamic, diverse families of various kinds. So I could do nothing else but that and make a very good living. So it can be a great profession, from those perspectives of earning money and that kind of stuff that's practical. And also, of course, hugely fulfilling. We get to be there for people's most amazing and important life moments. We also get to connect with people around their spiritual needs. To me, we're really living in a time of spiritual crisis, and that's what I love most about this work, being able to show up for people in a way that's in alignment with my values and in alignment with what I want to see of the world. So all that to say, ISHJ really helped prepare me for all of the roles of being rabbi and all of this cool work that I get to do. And I think that's all I want to say, but I'm of course happy to answer questions.
I'll also add, I realized I didn't mention, I do work as a congregational rabbi with Kol Hadash Humanistic Congregation in suburban Chicago, where I've been for now going on 21 years, and before that with a congregation in Michigan, the founding congregation called the Birmingham Temple. I love congregational work. There's a reason why I'm forcing myself to wear 2 hats, both helping to run the Institute and the congregational work, because I really love both of those aspects, the higher level teaching and the Sunday school experience. Like I got to bring a Torah scroll to several different classes this morning and show them how it looks and what it feels like if you touch the edge of it, because we're allowed to do it. It's not magic, and who writes it and how long it takes. And did you know that there are 300,000 letters in a Torah scroll? Well, now I do. So the point is that we get to learn, we get to teach, we get to explore things that are interesting to us, and we get to create a positive experience for people. Those kids will remember what it felt like to smell what that Torah scroll smells like, and to touch it. That'll be a lasting Jewish memory for them, and that's special that we get to do that. There was a question in the chat about the psychological assessment. What's the cutoff for accepting people in the program versus rejecting them over mental health issues? Do people with anxiety or depression need to worry, ADHD, and so on? What if they've had serious issues in the past, but with medication they're fine? So our goal is not to reject people. We want to empower people. We just need to make sure that the people that we're putting in positions of authority with our imprimatur, that this is going to be a good person to trust with your very delicate and important moments, is competent to handle it. And so that's part of that balancing act of making sure someone is able to be successful as a rabbi, but also able to serve people well in that capacity. So the short answer is we don't have a hard number score that we know you get this score on the test and that's what your results is. We have occasionally had students who come to us with some issues and we suggest pursuing something for themselves, or even redirect them into a different kind of study program rather than a clergy preparational study program. But the vast majority of people, the goal of this advanced screening is to understand their strengths and to reinforce where they need extra support. All of us have things that we could look. When I applied to the program now 25 years ago, I didn't do this screening process, and I could have learned a lot of useful things about myself that would have saved me a lot of mistakes in my early years as a rabbinic intern and assistant rabbi. So the hope is that it's empowering people to be better, not that we're looking for reasons to keep them out. They will have to handle the rigors of academic work. There will be syllabi and assignments and things that they need to get done. If they have academic challenges, then this will be one more area they have to work on. And to be honest, we have sometimes fewer resources than a full-scale university might have. A learning center where you could go and get the kind of support. We're a much smaller mom-and-pop kind of, if you're allowed to say that anymore, a small-scale operation for running our classes and so on. We're happy to help as we can. We just have limited capacity to do that for people that have more specialized needs. So, there may be some issues. We had one student who was unable to learn foreign languages. And then the question was the Hebrew requirement. Could they become a rabbi and not be able to read Hebrew? In the end, we said that this is sort of a core competency. You have to check a ketubah text to make sure the names are spelled right. There are times you're going to need that. You might be working with a bar mitzvah kid who wants to do a Hebrew reading, and so there's going to be areas where you need that skill. We redirected them into a different program, and we do have programs that don't require that level of Hebrew knowledge. Our officiant program doesn't require more than a very basic ability to decipher letters. The leadership program also requires a reading proficiency to pronounce out loud, but you don't have as much comprehension as the rabbinic program. So there are options for people with that kind of limited ability. And again, we want to empower people to be successful. So that's hopefully a short answer to that. I did also want to mention that if you're curious about what our courses are like to get a flavor of them, if you go and look up the classes themselves, they're organized under courses by different course areas. Many of the graduate level classes, which are the 400 and 500 level classes, they're labeled professional training, will have examples of a previous syllabus. So here's our philosophy of secular humanistic Judaism, and you can take a look at when we taught the class some years ago. Here were the required readings. Here were some of the pre-course assignments. To fulfill the course, here's what you had to do. Here was an example of the kind of topics we're going to cover. So you can get a flavor of the academic level and what the courses are like by browsing through some of those syllabi for past courses. And that could be very helpful for someone looking at the program who already has some graduate study in pocket. So I'll ask if there are any other questions or comments or issues that you'd like to get into. Again, we've got the Q&A, we've got the chat. You can also raise your hand and we can unmute you, and you can share it verbally if you prefer. All right. Well, it sounds like we answered all possible questions. For anybody watching this video at a future time, you can visit iishj.org and go to the Rabbinic Program page. You'll find a form there to fill out with an inquiry, or you can always email our office at info@iishj.org, and that'll get passed along. We're happy to respond to any questions about what's involved in training to become a humanistic rabbi. All right, well, Denise, someone's asking, is it generally easy to find an internship? Well, so that will be a function of our communities and their needs, but also your geography. That is, if there's a humanistic Jewish community local to you, it might be very easy to find opportunities to lead Shabbat services, to teach in a Sunday school, to work with the community as a public spokesperson, to do public-facing programs, staff a booth at a Pride festival. There's all kinds of ways that you can meet those internship requirements. If you have a local community, in some ways it's easier. If you don't have something that happens to be where you happen to be, and we understand the need to earn a living, that's true for everybody. Fortunately, with the advent of online life, There are ways that you can meet those requirements through online programming, and you can work with one community, or you could work with several communities and put together a series of projects that fulfill those requirements. So in some ways, it's easier now that we have the online thing. Online programming is its own animal, and it takes some getting used to doing it well. I feel bad for the first students I Sunday school taught when I was still a senior in college, and I was a terrible teacher of youth. I would have been great as a college lecturer, but that's not what a 12-year-old needs. I also feel bad for the first people that endured my online teaching, because it was basically just me talking, which is not the full potential of online learning. So we're better at that now. And that can also be a good skill to learn for you, as you're developing. One thing we did for our rabbinic students is we created an ability to create a video instead of writing a paper to complete the requirements for a class. Because after all, it takes a similar kind of research preparation planning to put that together. And we have some guidelines that you can't just say hello at the beginning and then play someone else's video. You have to bring some original content to it. But that's a way to show that you understand the material and also create something that'll be useful to people in a video capacity. We have a very extensive YouTube channel that the Institute facilitates for adult learning, and that kind of video might be wonderful to include in something like that. All right. We're also, by the way, happy to help you with matchmaking introductions, trying to connect you with the communities that have those needs and to give you opportunities to get those internship requirements done. Okay, question about financial aid. So our courses are generally, you'll notice that they're listed as 3-credit or 6-credit classes. We charge $200 a credit hour, which, if you compare it to other institutions, is actually relatively affordable. We do offer some scholarship opportunities for students. They can apply, first of all, for a tuition waiver of up to 50% off of that amount. So that already cuts each, for a 3-hour class, instead of $600, it becomes $300 and so on. We also do not charge interest if you're delaying your payment over a period of time. If that's more affordable, then that's fine. And we also have offered some work-study fellowships. So a number of discussion guides for our publications that are out there were created by students in the rabbinic program who, for a stipend of $500 or $400, would write a discussion guide for the book, depending on the length of the book. And so we get the discussion guide, and they get a fellowship that's paid for. And sometimes the discussion guide actually served as the paper for a class, and then it worked out, both ways. So there are some fellowship opportunities. The other thing that being a rabbinic candidate or rabbinic student opens for you is working with the community. And so it may be the case that communities will chip in to pay tuition. That's happened for some of our students who are already affiliated with the community. Their community pays the tuition, and in exchange, the person will teach 3 classes based on what they learned in the seminar, and then it's covering their tuition. They're providing a service to the community. Community gets the programming, they get the knowledge. So it's a symbiotic relationship. So there are definitely ways to make this happen. And in a pinch, when people are having trouble, let's say, affording traveling for the occasional in-person classes, we do have some classes that are in-person, usually in Chicago or Detroit, then we are sometimes able to find grants to help pay for the airfare, or home hospitality, if you don't mind staying in somebody's guest bedroom. We always coordinate pet allergies and things like that if necessary. That's another way to make it more affordable to go through the program, because then you don't have to pay for a hotel room in addition to everything else. I know that Denise had the chance to stay with one of my favorite people, whose name was Joan Berger, who was a very feisty older lady, and she and Denise got along great. So that can be a nice experience just to get to meet people, as Denise commented in the chat. The home hospitality can be a really nice positive experience, and I enjoyed it too when it was appropriate for me, even as a faculty going traveling and teaching. So yes, this is there are ways to make it more affordable. There will be some expenses. There will be some travel expenses. You'll have to buy some books. I'm finding more and more books pirated on PDF online, And it's sad and it's frustrating, especially when you're the one selling the book that somebody's getting the pirated copy of. It's particularly annoying. I would like our students to demonstrate, support for the institution, respect for copyright, and so on. But I can't, I'm not the police. I'm not going to turn you in. But there will be some expenses involved. Hopefully, between the additional work you're able to do with the title, support from a community, the fellowship opportunities, the tuition waivers, it can be something that's affordable. You do also have the outside master's degree. That's one other expense that you have to factor in. When I went to a bricks and mortar university, so I worked as a teaching assistant. So I was helping grade papers and so on in a class, but that covered my tuition. So I didn't pay a dime for my master's degree because I was working as a teaching assistant. That's the deal that some universities make, where you are slave labor as grader, but they don't charge you tuition for your classes. I see Denise also pointing out life cycle events are a possibility. And we have had rabbinic students who, once they've met the requirements for the officiant program, can get certified as a life cycle officiant even before they finished the full rabbinic program, and hang out a shingle to advertise and be able to start officiating at ceremonies legally, and also getting paid for doing that. So that's another opportunity that's opened up. And as Denise pointed out, we have a niche that we're willing to officiate at same-sex ceremonies, at intercultural, interfaith ceremonies. We're willing to co-officiate at those kind of ceremonies. And in some communities, there are very, very few or no rabbis willing to do that. And so that creates a need that we can meet that also benefits us in some way. All right. Any other questions? All right. Great. Well, it was wonderful to have you here, Denise. Thanks. I always like coming up with an excuse to talk with you. And thank you to all of you who joined us for this open house. Again, if you're watching it later and you have any questions, go to the Institute website, fill out the interest form. We'll be happy to be in touch. Shalom. Bye-bye.